Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Kelly Green Hour as we are set for week number 7, game number six for the Philadelphia Eagles, and it's their first NFC East divisional matchup against the New Jersey Giants. And I'm not giving them the respect of New York because they don't play in New York. They play in Jersey. The New Jersey Giants. I'm your host, LJ Harrell, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Connor Donald. Connor, what's up, man?
I'm ready. I'm ready for some more football this week. I mean, last week was pretty ugly. We're a little banged up, which isn't all necessarily great to hear. But we're let the season continue to roll on. I mean, this season's flying by already. It's crazy.
Football season
Think about where we
always
are.
does.
I know it's just not fair. We wait so long for this season. We wait so long for these games, and then boom, it's like here we are. What week are we in now? 7? Like we're already almost halfway through the season. It's just not right. The off season's too long, but I guess then we kind of sound like the owners, and we want them to be there out there even more.
It is going to go to 18 games.
So.
It is going to go to 18 games soon, and when that happens, hopefully we're still doing the show together, and we will definitely have conversations about that. But before we jump into this game, as always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHero54. And follow Eagles Pin Pool Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Instagram, everywhere at Eagles Pin Pool. And we are very appreciative of them allowing us to come over here to spread our Eagles joy. Well, sometimes joy. Even though they've been winning games, they haven't been very fun over the last year and a half. What's the last game that the Eagles actually won, like in terms of dominance, was the Dolphins game last year, if I'm not mistaken? It's been a long time since the Eagles played a clean game, and everybody anticipated that happening last week against the Browns. It did not, and we're hoping, Connor, that it can happen this week against the New York Giants.
Definitely. I mean, I'm not even going to say that it should be a game anymore that we should have, because I don't give this team any game. I don't think that any game is a game we should have. We should have to work for it, and we should have to get back to the level that we were back then when we had that stretch where we were winning games against the Dolphins and the Bills, and we looked like unstoppable. And then we ran into that brick wall that was the final 10 games of the season that we still are kind of stumbling out of. So I'm not giving them any game. We should, in theory, win. Yes.
I mean, if you look at the schedule going forward, up until Washington, they have the Giants, who are 2-4, 1-5, something like that, 2-4, I think. The Bengals are 2-4. The Jaguars are 1-5, and then the Cowboys, who are stumbling right now. And these next 4 games are going to have to be played without Jordan. At least the next 4 games are going to have to be played without Jordan Mailata, and that's a huge loss for the Philadelphia Eagles, because Mailata is one of the best left tackles in football. And remember, like, nobody really thought nobody knew what Mailata was going to turn into. You know, after the Eagles drafted him in the 7th round out of Australia, he'd never put on football uniform, football pads, a helmet, and now he's an all-world left tackle. Fred Johnson's going to slide over to take his spot. It's going to be interesting. It's a big test this week against Brian Burns and that really good New York Giants defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Mailata obviously is a massive loss. I mean, it looks like Fred Johnson's more than ready to step in and fill the void. Obviously, he was just kind of thrown into it last week, and he had a pretty tough matchup on the other side of him. So we can't fault him for, I think he played 13 snaps and gave up 3 pressures according to PFF. So we won't fault him too much for that. He gets not necessarily a friendlier matchup this week, because he's probably going to be matched up with like Brian Burns. If they
that's the side Brian Burns is usually on. So
yeah, exactly. So theoretically, probably Brian Burns will end up being the one across from him. But I mean, I have faith in Fred Johnson. I mean, it sounds like like everybody is singing their praises for Fred Johnson. He's obviously not going to be Lane Johnson. He's obviously not going to be Jordan Mailata. But I mean, all you have to do is be able to right the ship for 4 weeks, hopefully just 4 weeks. And then when Jordan Mailata comes back, hopefully we'll be in a better spot than we are now. And Jordan Mailata will be able to come back and take his spot back. Dallas Goddard obviously is going to be another big loss for this week. Um, I mean, it seemed like, Jalen Hurts had some confidence in Grant Calcaterra. It looks like he has more confidence in Grant Calcaterra than he has Jahan Dotson based on the targets.
Well, they were college teammates for a year, so.
They were, exactly. But I mean, that was quite a while ago. But I mean, to show any sort of confidence whatsoever is a positive outside of AJ Brown and Devontae Smith and Saquon Barkley, because it feels like that's the only people he has any confidence in. So yeah, it shouldn't be. It's tough to say what this matchup's going to look like. I mean, Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns were both limited or non-participants right up until today. So what type of shape are they in? How effective are they going to be? It'll be really interesting to see. I mean, they do get Malik Neighbors back, but on the flip side, they also lost. They're without Kayvon Thibodeau. They lost Andrew Thomas, who's definitely their best offensive lineman. So it feels like just as some things get better for the Giants, things ultimately falter for the Giants as well on the injury front. But I mean, that feels like the story of every NFL team this season. It just feels like injuries are just debilitating.
Yeah, you remember the Eagles came out of the bye super healthy, and then they lost Goddard, they lost Mailata, Slay got banged up, and he should be good to go on Sunday. Granted, I'm not 100% sure if we really need him. Like, I love Quinyon Mitchell, like Keely Ringo and Isaiah Rodgers, so like I think they would be fine out there. But obviously having the vet out there is not a bad thing. What's up, E-Money Bentley? Go Birds. Definitely. Let's go Birds.
And don't forget LJ, James Bradbury, day to day now.
Oh, God. Actually, I mean, having him as a veteran backup safety, I wouldn't mind. I also forgot to mention that if you are tuning in live, let us know your thoughts in the chat. Your players of the game, your keys to the game, your predictions of the Eagles Giants. And we will give our prediction and our Unheralded Player of the Weeks at the end of the show before we give our predictions. So be tuning into that. But let's start off with the Eagles offense, and let's start off with the return of Saquon Barkley. Obviously, that's the big, and people are trying to Barkley himself is trying to downplay it. He doesn't want to put too much. He doesn't want to get too amped up for it, because if you get amped up for this, like, you could be emotionally and physically out of it before the kickoff. So he's kind of trying to downplay it. But the Giants defensively anyway are going to want to come out and not let him beat them. I mean, the chances of Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns didn't play with him, but the chances of Dexter Lawrence missing this game, slim to none. They do have Ojulari. Like, their defense is the strong point of their team. We'll be honest. They held the Bengals last week to like 17 points, and Chase Brown scored a touchdown at like around the 2-minute mark of the fourth quarter to get to 17. So it's going to be a key. It's going to be interesting to see what the Giants decide to do. You have a healthy AJ Brown, you have a healthy Devontae Smith, and you have Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts. If they're going to put 8 in the box, good luck, because AJ Brown and Devontae Smith will feast all day. And then if they decide to maybe put a couple safeties back and they have a light box, then Saquon might feast all day. So, again, we talk about this time and time again, but like, the big question is going to be, are the Eagles going to score a first quarter point? A safety, a field goal, a touchdown, whatever it's going to be. Will the Eagles actually score in the first quarter, as they are the only team to not score yet this year?
Yeah, I mean, it continues to be one of the biggest storylines outside of, Nick Sirianni and his antics from last week. And the storylines are Saquon Barkley, fast start, and Mekhi Becton doesn't want to be back on that football field, which is fine, because we don't want anyone to play on that football field. But at the end of the day, you hit it. Like, there has to be a fast start. We have to come out prepared. This is something Nick Sirianni, after all the antics of last week and all the media attention nationally and locally just go reverberating in on him, taking on the villain role. It's time for him to get his team to shift the focus elsewhere. Get your team focused on the game and ready to win. They want you to bring the energy, and doing it by pushing it back on the fans and treating the fans like that. We could debate, does it make sense? Should you do it? That at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. They want the energy, which is fine, but show it in a different way. Get your team prepared. Get your team ready. We've just week in and week out, even dating back to that stretch of 10 games last season that were a disaster, just slow start after slow start after slow start. Hopefully, Jalen Hurts turned the corner from a ball security standpoint last week. I mean, no turnovers. We shouldn't go make a humongous deal about it, because for the weeks prior to that, he was averaging about the Eagles as a whole. And I think Jalen Hurts even were averaging 2 turnovers a game. So, but ball security, getting that fast start, getting that focus back on the team. It just feels like, recently leading into the bye week and through the bye week, it's been a lot about egos. It's been a lot about attention on individual people. And it's time to get this back, the culture back to the team-focused Eagles teams that find ways to win. When the team is focused together, they find ways to win, not when they're all caught up in their own egos and saying some of the stuff that they're saying, retweeting fans, tweeting fans, commenting to them, showing up on, the podcasts of your rival and saying some of the stuff that you're saying. It's time for this team to focus and become a team. It just feels like it hasn't felt that way for the last, call it 15, 16 weeks. It just hasn't felt like that for quite a while now. And it's time to start steering that ship in the right direction. And it can start with rewriting some of the storylines that have kind of taken over the early part of the season.
Do you think the Eagles could be using this like as us against the world mentality? And if so, would it really work?
If it's us against the world, it seems like it's certain people against the world. It doesn't seem yet to me like they've decided to take on the us against the world as a team mentality that we saw, when the Nick Foles and Doug Peterson, I hate to bring it back to that one because everyone, probably wishes, Nick Foles, he would have won us multiple Super Bowls. But at the end of the day, like, you look at that was them against the world. That was the dogs, the underdogs, the dog masks, everything came out. That was a team taking that culture and taking that mentality and running with it. Right now, it just feels like it's certain people against the world, and that mentality has to change.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot there. Like you mentioned earlier, there's been a lot of talk about Sirianni this week. Honestly, like I think it's been blown out of proportion.
I agree.
I mentioned on Friday on Monday, I think it was, that the first couple of weeks of the season when he wasn't being his outgoing self, that was different. You don't want somebody to change. You want him to be who he is. The Eagles hired Sirianni for a reason. Now, it could have been because they thought that he was a puppet and they can kind of control him, but still, you hired him for a reason. And Brandon Graham has said it. Jalen Hurts has said it. Multiple players have said it. Like, have told Sirianni, like, go back to who you were in 2022. Be that outgoing guy. And like, that's who I want him to be. If he's not going to be that person, like, I don't want him to change. You don't change somebody. Let him be who he is. And obviously it's been successful. Like, the Eagles have won way more than they've lost with Sirianni. I know the last year hasn't really gone as great as we have hoped. But like, this team has above 60%, 65% winning percentage with Sirianni. Like, he's a winner. Like, now, if he were to get fired, is he going to get hired somewhere else as a head coach? Probably not. Like, let's be honest. Unless he wins the Super Bowl. Like, I know that he's been to the playoffs 4 years in a row, 3 years in a row, right? Yeah, this is year number 4. He's did I do that right? No, this is year number 4, right? I am losing my head.
Yep. Year 4. Yep.
He's been to the playoffs 3 years in a row, and like, if he makes the playoffs this year, it'd be 4 in a row. And depending on how they look in that first playoff game, if like they get blown out, there's a potential of him getting fired. But like, it's rare when coaches are that successful. I mean, Tony Dungy, he didn't make the playoffs 4 years in a row with Tampa before they let him go. John Gruden came in there and won a Super Bowl. But sometimes new voices are needed. And does this team need a new voice? Potentially, maybe. But I'm under the consideration like we have to let it play out. And once it plays out, we get to the off season and see how things go. And obviously, we don't want to talk about that now. But again, I have zero issues with how Sirianni has been acting. Like, let him be him.
And I guess it's just more of the city thing. Philadelphia doesn't like a coach who's playing the villain for their favorite team. Like Philadelphia bleeds green through and through, no matter how much people may love the Phillies or the Sixers or the Flyers. Let's
It's a
just
football
face
town.
it is a football town. The more you can ask 100 people who the number one team is for them in their heart out of the four, and the Eagles are probably going to appear over 50% between the four of them. It's the reality of it. So they just don't like seeing this villain because we've been used to, softer spoken, quieter coaches who win. They don't like Andy Reid. He was a winner. Doug Peterson. I mean that's debatable. But like Andy Reid was a winner. He's softer spoken. He's quieter. This is such a shift from the type of coach that the Eagles are used to. And they just like to be able to berate the bench, yell at the bench, say what they want to say, and nobody get in their face and come back at them. And Nick Sirianni, when I've been watching, because I don't get the Philly feeds, but the national feeds are like, what are your thoughts on the villain, the Nick Sirianni? And you know what? It's super mixed. There's some people who are like, it's just part of him. It's part of the mentality that he's trying to instill in the team. And then there's some guys who are like, you're the coach. You don't talk to fans like that. That's not how you are. So like, I don't know what the Philly media has been portraying him as, because like I said, I don't get those feeds up here in Canada. But, when you look at some of the on the greater, national and international scale of watching things, it's mixed. Like you could go either way. If we were winning, we wouldn't even be talking about Nick Sirianni. If he was getting all hyped up, yelling at the fans, doing his thing, and we were sitting here at 5-0 or 4-1, we're probably, and we've been blowing out teams, we're probably not even talking about this. We probably don't even care about the villain Nick Sirianni. We probably don't care about whatever his personality is or what he's doing. But because we're 3-2, we're barely grinding out wins when we are winning games. He has become the focal point of everything because of what he is doing and what he is not doing.
So the Philly media is pretty much saying they want him to act professional because he's the face of a multi-billion-dollar corporation, blah, 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 blah,
because
blah.
The Philly media is so professional themselves.
Exactly. Like, just let Sirianni be Sirianni. But I think we kind of got off on a tangent here.
Back to the Giants.
Back to the game. Yeah. So I know that there's a lot of emotion going into this for Saquon Barkley and that Giants defense, and we've talked about their defense. Dexter Lawrence is going to play. Brian Burns is going to play. They're without Kayvon Thibodeau. That's a big loss for them. They have Azeez Ojulari that he can blitz. He could get after it. And then in the secondary, one of the guys that I think both of us thought the Eagles could potentially have a interest in, Tyler Nubin, the rookie out of Minnesota, and Deonte Banks. It's going to be interesting to see who Banks covers. Is Banks going to be on AJ or is Banks going to be on Devontae? It should be an awesome matchup between him and whoever he decides to go up against.
Yeah, it's such an intriguing matchup overall because our offense as a whole is kind of, middle of the pack. We have all these weapons. We talk about it week in and week out. Who do you cover? How do you cover all of these weapons? And it just feels like some of these weapons, it just feels like it's just two of them that become the focal point. And then, of course, Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley took a bit of a backseat last week to the return of Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. But really, it's a middle of the pack, especially when it comes to a passing defense. We rank 14th in yards. We rank 18th in passing touchdowns. We rank 20th in scoring percentage. Like, we're just struggling to put points on the board and to move the ball efficiently from a passing perspective. So, I mean, and then you look on the flip side at the New York Giants, and the New York Giants rank number 10 in yards allowed as a defense. So they're actually not a bad defense. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the Eagles face this Giants defense this week, because they are a decent passing defense. They're a fairly good they're like a middle of the pack run defense. But then from a scoring and turnover perspective, they don't force a lot of turnovers, and they allow a decent amount of points. So it could go either way, like for scoring percentage of drives at least. So it could go either way. It's going to be really interesting to see if the Eagles can come out and really get a fast start and put the Giants on their heels. Then I think we have a really good chance to come out of this with a win. If we have the slow start again, we don't really get any points on the board until halfway through the second quarter in our typical fashion this year, the Giants can easily run with this, because while we know that offensively they're not all that great, their offense literally, they rank 29th in points for, while their defense ranks 9th in points allowed. Like, that's a huge discrepancy. You got a team that is not allowing points to get on the board defensively, but cannot put them on the board offensively. And so, like, if the Eagles can just get them on their heels, could even get up like a score, 7 points, just 7 points could just be enough for the Eagles, as long as they can periodically continue to put points on out the board after that, could be enough for them to get this victory, because the Giants don't give up a lot of points. They don't put up a lot of points.
They don't either, but the Eagles defense was good last week against Deshaun Watson. And I guess Daniel Jones is better than Deshaun Watson. I know that doesn't say much. We'll get into that, to the Giants offense in a couple of minutes. But I think the big key for, obviously, don't turn the ball over, which Jalen didn't do last week. And he obviously is more comfortable when he has A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith on the field. And he's going to have both of them on the field. He's going to have Saquon on the field. He had a good connection with Calcaterra last week. It's just, hopefully he doesn't think the pass rush is there when it's not there. And obviously when you don't have Mailata on the left side protecting your blind side, and it's Fred Johnson, that could be something that he may think about. So that's going to be interesting to watch early in the game. That's going to be an indicator of the type of offense, or of the type of presence that Hurts is going to have in the pocket. Because obviously when you have Jordan Mailata there, you don't really have to think about it. You know Mailata is going to be there. Now you have Fred Johnson, and obviously against the Saints, Fred Johnson stepped in for Lane Johnson admirably. He did okay against Tampa Bay, but that was on the right side. Now he's on the left side and going up against Brian Burns. So that's going to be interesting to see how the Eagles help him out. I don't know if you remember, but back in, it was a long time ago, Winston Justice started a game at right tackle for the Eagles, and Donovan got sacked like 10 times that game. And Winston Justice gave up 8 sacks. And I'm hoping that doesn't happen for Fred Johnson. I'm hoping that Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni are smarter to not put Fred Johnson and Jalen Hurts and the Eagles offense into that position in this game Sunday against the Giants.
And hopefully, under pressure and when blitzed, Jalen Hurts has actually done better than in the past. So it feels like there's been improvements made there. But without Dallas Goedert there too, like, what type of help do you give Fred Johnson on the outside? Because you don't want to, you want Saquon Barkley to be a presence in the offense, but you don't want him to be the one that supports Fred Johnson. Do you have the tight end over on that side more, trying to help Fred Johnson out, given the bump and run type of techniques, and trying to help Fred Johnson slow anything down possible? Like, it'll be interesting to see what they do. But as we've seen in the past with the Eagles, they kind of leave their new offensive linemen on an island. It feels like they just, whenever there's an injury to one of their starters, they just treat the backup like they're a starter. And don't seem to provide a whole lot of support from the tight end and running back perspective, and just providing any type of little support. So it'll be interesting to see. That could be like the Jeff Stoutland mentality too, is like, you got your next man up and we're going to treat him just like the last guy. But obviously you can't treat Fred Johnson like Jordan Mailata. You just can't. He definitely doesn't stand the same type of chance as Jordan Mailata. But I mean, besides that, like internally, like Dexter Lawrence is averaging over a sack a game right now.
I think he
He's got
leads the league in
7
sacks.
sacks. Yeah, it's crazy. He's got 7
He's
sacks.
like on Aaron Donald pace from a defensive tackle position.
Even in general, their defense has 26 total sacks on the year. We as a team have 11. Yes, we played one less game, but 11. Like that's crazy
That's
that
2
the New
sacks a
York
game.
Giants have
And we have
that
5
much.
that's 2 sacks a game, and we have 5 the last game.
Exactly. And then like you look at this, like there were 26 sacks in 6 games. That's huge. They're averaging like 4 sacks, over 4 sacks a game.
They
That's
lead the league in sacks, right?
Yeah, I do. I believe so. Like this is an effective defense at getting after the quarterback. And it's not like they've been playing, scrub competition. Like they played the Minnesota Vikings, who are currently undefeated. They've played the Washington Commanders, who are currently top of the NFC East. Cleveland Browns, yeah. Dallas Cowboys, blah. Seahawks are kind of middling. The Bengals should be better. So the competition hasn't been great, but like to average 4 sacks a game, that's huge. Like that's you have to respect that. And it comes from all over the place. Of course, Dexter Lawrence has 7, and then you got like Jason Pinnock with 3. You got Aziz Ojolari with 3. You got Brian Burns with 3. They can come at you from anywheres. And so it's going to be interesting to see how Jalen Hurts and the Eagles handled this pressure, because you know that there's going to be pressure. You know that they're going to be bringing some heat to Jalen Hurts. They know that, he may be better against the blitz, but if you get him moving, he might not be able to make the best decisions if you flush him out of the pocket and keep him from running using his feet. You know that you can sometimes make him make bad decisions. We've seen a lot of his interceptions come when he comes out of the pocket and he kind of forces a throw that isn't necessarily there. So it will be interesting overall, because this Giants defense, and when you look at this Giants defense and this Eagles defense, it's like night and day. The Giants defense is so much better, and they're actually getting sacks and getting after the quarterback. And like you said, we did have 5 sacks last week, but before that, we had 6 total across 4 weeks. So 1 week, and I said it, like I was going to be excited if we did what we had to do. And I was excited last week. We said, get after Deshaun Watson and don't make him look like 2018 Deshaun Watson. They didn't. That for 12 play passes they did. But outside of that, they generally did a good job of not letting Deshaun Watson look like 2018 Deshaun Watson. Now I want to see that roll over. They just lost Andrew Thomas. They lost their best offensive lineman. That's a huge get. We've lost Jordan Mailata, but our offensive line as a whole is a lot better than the New York Giants offensive line. So you have to be able to find a way to take advantage of that loss of Andrew Thomas. And Bryce Huff has he got off the schneid? Are we finally going to see Bryce Huff actually perform?
Before we jump into the Eagles defense, I just one question about the offense. These first teams like to script the first 15. Obviously, the Eagles script has been crap because they haven't been able to score. I heard the number 20. Dan Orlovsky said it, 24 or I think total yards. 24 total yards in their opening drives of games. That's 5 games, 4 yards a drive. That is bad. Obviously, the first game was an interception and whatnot. Like, and Jalen said this week kind of starts with getting a first down and then being able to go from there. But obviously, the Eagles haven't been able to. What do you want to see in the first 15? Like, what can Kellen Moore do to get Jalen going early, to get this offense going early, so that they're not, going 3 and out and potentially putting the defense in a bind early on?
I mean, I think you got to drop a nice big play that involves A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith. It's clear we saw that be the start of drives in the past where they just put a defense on their heels right away. Like when we were rolling last year, there were times where the first play was a pass and it was going 20 plus yards down the field to AJ Brown or Devontae Smith. I think you have to, that's where Jalen Hurts tends to get comfortable, just catching a team completely off guard, making this massive play to start a drive or within the first 3 plays of a drive before you go 3 and out. That's what you need to see. You got to put the Giants right, like what I was saying earlier in the episode, put them on their heels right away. Try and get a big play. Try and find a big play early from AJ Brown or Devontae Smith or Grant Calcaterra if that so be the option if Brown and Smith aren't there. Don't forget about Saquon Barkley, but we know like they're getting better at not forgetting about Saquon Barkley, but to the same point, they seem to continue to move away from him at times in the early going of the game. So I would like to see that. Just unleash a play with Jalen Hurts, drop a play or two that Jalen says, yeah, I like this. I'm comfortable with this. And Brown and Smith, everybody, the key play people are on the same page, and Jalen Hurts can make a big play happen, because I think they just have to get off it by just getting a big play out right away. Like you said, like averaging 4 yards per drive in the first quarter. Like that's can't happen. Can't
Also,
happen.
like
you
you
have
mentioned,
to be able
you
to throw the
mentioned
ball.
not forgetting about Barkley. They gave the ball to Barkley on the first play last week, 5 yards, and then he didn't touch it the rest of the drive. 2 incomplete passes. So, like you can establish the run, which can help the pass. So we'll see if they do that. Also, there's been a lot of talk of Jalen not being under center, and they're trying to figure out if that's who is that. Is that because Jalen just doesn't know how to do it, or is that just the philosophy or the offense? What do you think the issue is there when it comes to under center plays?
I think if it wasn't for the struggles that we're seeing from Jalen Hurts, this wouldn't even be a topic of conversation, because whatever's working, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The old adage.
Like they have 4% plays under center, and I think that even includes the tush push plays.
Yeah, that's so low. And like obviously when you're playing, from shotgun and stuff, you also that tends that your running back doesn't get the same head of steam type of run and start because they're standing right beside you. And then their head of steam is running into the offense and defensive line that's already starting to make their way back. It does throw off certain elements of the game. It is interesting that it is that low to me. Like I agree. I mean, we wouldn't be visiting this if it wasn't for the circumstances surrounding Jalen Hurts right now. I just don't know if Jalen Hurts is comfortable there. I think he likes the space. He likes to be able to see what's happening. Whole part of the RPO aspect of the somewhat of this offense, and the mentality that Jalen Hurts has worked with in prior years in Eagles offenses. I think he just likes to have more of a view of the field, and I don't think he gets that from being under center. And that's not necessarily good, because you can't necessarily mix up your playbook and mix up the looks if you're always lining up from the same shotgun or pistol or formations like that, where you're a few yards back. You can kind of prepare better defensively if he's never going to line up under center. So it is weird. Like 4%, such a low, like wildly low number. Like I think I can't remember what they were saying, but I don't think anybody else was remotely close to that. So, like either. Not even remotely close.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So we'll see if that changes at all. I mean, at practice today, there was video of them practicing under center plays, whatever that is. But we'll see what happens. We'll see. Hopefully that the win last week kind of got a monkey off their back and they can start this run. Let's jump to the defensive side of the football for the Eagles. I think it's going to be a test, obviously. Malik Neighbors, I think he leads the league in targets. Now, I know he missed 2 games, but before he missed those 2 games with a concussion, he led the league in targets. I think he had like 75 targets in like 4 games, which is a ridiculous amount. But he also is their only offensive weapon. They have Devin Singletary at running back, but it's Devin Singletary. Darius Slayton, Wardell Robinson, and Theo Johnson, the rookie from Penn State, is their tight end. And again, we've talked about the offensive line. It's not very good. Andrew Thomas is on IR. So Joshua Azudu is going to be starting at left tackle. John Runyon Jr. is going to be at left guard. John Michael Schmitz at center. Greg Van Rotten at right guard. And Jermaine Illuminora at right tackle. The potential to see an Evan Neal out there at left guard, maybe doubtful, but he's been a big bust since getting drafted in the top 10 out of Alabama. But I mean, I think this is going to be a test for the cornerbacks. Obviously, you know, Quinyon. This could be the first of a lot of battles between Quinyon Mitchell and Malik Neighbors. We don't know Slay's primed to play and start on Sunday, but I mean, you don't want to risk it, especially on that field and somebody his age, because that field sucks, as a lot of people have said. And then also, I think another big challenge for Cooper DeJean, because with Slayton and Robinson, they both, and even Neighbors can come out of the slot too. So that's going to be a big time battle for him. So I'm looking forward to see what the Eagles defense can do and how they can rebound, how they can expand after last week's really dominant. It was a dominant showing last week against the Browns.
Yeah, it definitely was. Like they were absolutely dominant on defense. It's exactly what we wanted to see. It's exactly what we needed to see to kind of quell some of the discourse that was happening. You know, especially the pass rush and stuff. But we need to see that be consistent. We need to see consistency. For the New York Giants, they've gotten some consistency on defense, not so much on offense. For us, we've kind of been a mixed bag offensively and defensively. So I feel like, you know, the Browns are really bad, but the Giants are not like tiers and tiers above the Browns. Their Russian attack is with and without Devin Singletary has not been good. Devin Singletary's on his way back from an injury that has kept him out for 2 weeks, and now he was limited all week with this groin injury. So how effective can he be? That's tough to say. But I mean, from a Russian standpoint, they rate 24th in yards and 27th in touchdowns. So it doesn't exactly strike fear into you. But this is a type of Russian attack that you talk down to, and the Eagles will allow them to get chunk plays. It just feels like that's the type of situation that will arise. And then from a passing standpoint, I mean, they rank 18th in yards. Again, like they're not the most effective on any front, but like you said, they have been without Malik Neighbors for 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks, Malik Neighbors ended up having 386 yards and 35 receptions and 3 touchdowns. And then you look, the only reason Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton are even remotely close to Neighbors is because Neighbors missed those 2 games. I think, you know, it's a test for Cooper DeJean, but I think DeJean should be able to dominate in the slot against Robinson or Slayton. And Kenyon Mitchell, like, I think this is a time you don't worry about Darius Slay on the top guy. Like, this is a one where you, like you said, you're going to see this matchup for years, maybe even a decade or more to come, depending if the Giants are smart about this key offensive piece,
Neighbors
unlike the last one.
Neighbors can bounce when he can.
But Malik Neighbors and like Kenyon Mitchell could be a good matchup. I trust Kenyon Mitchell. I don't think there's any reason not to trust him. Could Darius Slay keep up, you know, with Malik Neighbors? Malik Neighbors has 4.4 speed. He's a fast dude. Kenyon Mitchell, I think, can keep up from a physicality standpoint, from more of a speed standpoint, from a health standpoint. And we want to see what we got. So it's time to unleash Kenyon Mitchell. And I mean, I think, you know, if you're going to see, because you said 75, it was 52 targets in 4 weeks.
Sorry.
But I mean, when you're looking at 52 targets over 4 weeks, if they're throwing the ball to that extent to Malik Neighbors and you got Kenyon Mitchell there, I mean, he's definitely going to be my player to watch because I think he gets picked number 1 this week.
Should have had one.
I think
last
he comes
week.
off of the Schneid.
Yeah, he should have.
He should have had one at least. I think almost every single week we've seen him almost have one. And just like Darius Slay says about, like, once he gets his hand on that ball, I don't think it's going to stop. Like, I think he's going to become that ball hawk. He's going to have the confidence he needs to keep going forward and making more plays like that. But I agree with you. Like, we don't know what version of Darius Slay we would get based on him being a little bit banged up. And we already know we're getting a slightly lesser Darius Slay, even if he wants to talk about his past accomplishments. This year, we're getting a slightly lesser Darius Slay. So Kenyon Mitchell on Malik Neighbors, I want to see, and I think it would create pick number 1.
Yeah, I it wouldn't shock me if the Eagles can get pressure on Daniel Jones, he'll definitely throw the ball because we know he's going to force it to Malik Neighbors. I'm looking at the defensive line. Bryce Huff going back to the stadium that he called home for a couple of years. Maybe that kind of just puts into his mind of what he did while playing with the Jets in that stadium. Also, hopefully the Eagles keep putting him in that 4-point stance. He looks like a totally different pass rusher, totally different player when he's in the 4-point stance and not playing standing up. So hopefully Fangio and Coach Hurt have noticed that and just let him do what he does, getting after the quarterback from the 4-point stance. Hopefully Jalen Carter, I know he practiced today full go. He's going to be good to go, but came up with a shoulder injury. So hopefully that doesn't affect him, but he should be able to win the battles. And then we said that last week too. And he didn't have the greatest game. Like, I want to see a game like he had against the Saints. That's what I want to see this week. We know BG is going to be there. My other worry is also Nakobe Dean against Devin Singletary or one of the running backs out of the backfield. When Nakobe Dean is coming downfield, going after, he's great. But when he has to cover somebody, that's the issue. So I don't know what's going to happen there. Hopefully he doesn't get beat on a couple of plays. Like against the Browns last week, we saw he had a play on the play that Keely Ringo hit. I think it was Jerry Jeudy. Like, Dean should have been able to make a tackle and didn't. And I know Judy's fast, but he was there. Should have had the tackle, didn't. So he's definitely got to work on that. So we'll see what happens. But I'm very intrigued by some of these matchups, whether it's Neighbors and Mitchell or Slayton and DeJean or, Jalen Carter against John Runyon or Jalen Carter against Schmidt. It should be a fun battle. And typically when we talk Eagles-Giants, Eagles own this matchup recently. And I know the Giants won week 17 last year, week 18 last year. The Eagles kind of didn't care. Well, I shouldn't say didn't care, but they were a house fire at the end of last year. Let's be honest about it. So hopefully the Eagles come out and we know that the crowd, which is going to have a bunch of Eagles fans. It's like an hour and a half drive, 2-hour drive from Philly. There's going to be a lot of Eagles fans there. And there's all this talk of how are the Giants fans going to greet Saquon Barkley. Well, it's going to be a lot of cheering because there's going to be a lot of Eagles fans. So hopefully Saquon keeps his motions in check and the Eagles kind of get him going. And let's see if he can have a big game. I want a $150, 2 touchdowns. That would be awesome to see him do.
Yeah, the Giants faithful would be definitely kicking themselves in the butt for if he goes off for even over 100 and a touchdown is more than what you get from most running backs right now. So defensively, Milton Williams seems to be struggling with something nagging. So I'm okay seeing a little more Ojomo. Yeah, because he did pretty good last week. He showed out decently as a pass rusher. He pretty much took over one of the opponent's drives on 2 plays and was in Deshaun Watson's face twice back to back. And then he's been respectable against the run. So if something's really nagging at Milton Williams, seeing a bit more Ojomo, I'm not opposed to that. It would be interesting to see what he's capable of doing. He was a former 7th round pick. He is one of those guys that, the Eagles have kept around and clearly have some sort of value on him to build depth up behind the defensive tackles. So I'd be okay seeing more of that because Milton Williams has ended up limited, I think, the past 2 or 3 weeks with something going on. I think it was his hamstring or something. So we'll see what happens on that front. Jordan Davis, we'd love to see another dominant game. If we get one every 5 games, I'd like to see it become a bit more consistent. I'd like to see consistency in, half dominating every second game versus one every 5 games. We get this dominant showing. Like you said, he's got some interesting matchups inside. Hopefully, he'll be able to take advantage of them. Or Jalen Carter, I meant Jordan Davis. I mean, Jordan Davis is almost becoming like an afterthought in there. So I think it would help if he could he feels like just a gap filler at this point. Like make the running back go somewhere else, make the quarterback flush a certain direction. Like I don't know. It's I mean, to think that we spent a first on Jordan Davis and now we're sitting there and we're seeing what has come of it over the last 2 seasons
and they traded up for him.
It's kind of frustrating. But I guess we'll continue to see that out. There's other bigger storylines and players to be watching that have our attention over Jordan Davis for now. He gets to avoid our wrath. I want to see the pressure continue. I mean, Zach Bond still leads this team in sacks. Zach Bond, your linebacker, still leads it, tied with Josh Sweat. But I'm going to say he leads the team because it makes this pass rush sound worse because it is really bad. We got 5 last week. I mean, I'd like to see some consistency. The Giants are getting 4 a week. If we can get to 2 or 3 a week at least to get things rolling, we definitely need. Great. You did what you needed to last week in a matchup that you had to have. If you faltered again last week, Nick Sirianni might have went to the back burner. This pass rush would have been front and center. And I know we still made it front and center on our show as let's see more first. So hopefully we see more and they definitely take advantage of the Thomas situation. Bryce Huff, hopefully, it was a matchup. It was a very friendly matchup. So is a 4-point stance going to work against all opponents? I hope so. But keep putting him in it. Let's see if it works because he looks a lot more comfortable that way. Nakobe Dean, he's missed. The past couple weeks have been really bad. I mean, right before the bye, the first 2 weeks were really good, and then it started to trickle into worse and worse and worse. And hopefully, he can get back to. I don't even know what Nakobe Dean form is, but the first 2 weeks of Nakobe Dean, it would be nice if he could get back to that Nakobe Dean because, I mean, it wasn't pretty. Some of the missed tackles are starting to pile up. He's just not, I don't know if he's just not seeing the field right, but he definitely needs to help us with our fears of linebacker because not only do we sit here and worry week in and week out, when's Nakobe Dean going to get hurt, but the inconsistency of play just adds to things against Nakobe Dean currently. So we'll see what happens. And then at the safety position, Reed's going to Reed and CJ's going to CJ. At this point, the safety position, I don't see it as active. I don't see it as much of a need, but it's just not sexy. It's not exciting, but it's going to do the trick.
So before we finish up, 2 questions. First, Jalen Hurts, Daniel Jones. Who's the better quarterback right now?
I think Jalen Hurts.
Okay.
If I were to pick, I trust Jalen Hurts to move the football more, put up enough points. I mean, you look at that New York Giants. The New York Giants overall, they've put up 96 points on offensively in 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in 5 weeks, we've been able to put up 106, I think.
So wait, let me ask you this. If Daniel Jones was quarterbacking this Eagles offense right now, would the offense look better than it does under Jalen Hurts right now? Because
I don't think
so. Because it's different.
But
because the Giants offense is, besides Malik Neighbors, it's awful. But I'm trying to play comparable here. If we put Daniel Jones in this Eagles offense with the playmakers they have now, is it better under Jones or is it better under Hurts?
In theory, it would be Daniel Jones' best offense that he's ever played in, and it's not even remotely close. So potentially, but I mean, I don't think either are anything to write home about when looking at Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels is setting the course for the NFC East, and the rest of the quarterbacks.
He's also a rookie, so again, we saw it with RG3. And
I agree. Yeah, maybe. But at this point, he's the best by a landslide. But Daniel Jones, like that type of weaponry, that type of offensive line is like unlike anything in Philadelphia. If he was in Philadelphia, it would be unlike anything he had ever got the chance to see in New York. So I feel like maybe you could finally get a true gauge of Daniel Jones in our offense. But what would that say about Jalen Hurts? Hopefully not too much, but.
And better coach, Brian Dable, Nick Sirianni.
I don't like at this point, at this juncture of the season and what they've been seen doing and what they've been doing. I'd rather neither. But if
you have to pick one, neither was not an option.
If I had to pick one, I feel like I'd pick Brian Dable, honestly, because he can actually genuinely be a coordinator, genuinely can be a coach. He can genuinely be things that Nick Sirianni, what we've talked about. What is he? He's a culture maker. He's on certain weeks, he's a culture creator and maker, but he never seems to have his team prepared. The things with the fans, some of the stuff, the situation with Jalen Hurts, there's just too much that we shouldn't be hearing and seeing about a coach. Yeah, what about Eagles, you? Dayball or Sirianni?
The Eagles I think it was Dan Orlovsky said they were the most unprepared team in the NFL, and that's saying a lot when you have the Panthers and the Browns and some of these dregs in the league. Who would I pick? Wow. Man. Honestly, don't know.
Imagine Dayball's working the best with what he's got, but imagine you say the Daniel Jones scenario. Imagine Brian Daboll with these weapons. Like, take him back to the Buffalo days and what he had with Josh Allen and the weapons that they had, Stephon Diggs and that Gabe Davis and that offense. Like, you put Brian Daboll
and Brian
in this
Daboll
offense,
has worked with Jalen Hurts before because he was his offensive coordinator at Alabama.
Yep,
so it's probably Daboll. I think a lot of that has recency bias with what's happened with Sirianni. And again, I don't honestly care what he has done. Like, if we got to stop being, look, if you're going to give it, you better be able to take it. Put it that way. So if you're going to get all up on Sirianni, and if he's going to bring it back at you, don't cry and bitch like a little girl. Like, if you're going to give it to him and when he brings it back to you, don't be crying. So that's all I'm really going to say about that. It's probably Daboll, but again, I am a Sirianni fan. Things do need to get cleaned up a little bit for sure, but we'll see what happens. All right. So before we get to our players to watch, keys to the game, and prediction, let's go to our unheralded player of the week for week 6 in the NFL. And unheralded player, we don't want Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. We want somebody kind of under the radar. Who's your unheralded player, Connor, for week 6?
I'm going with running back for Tampa Bay, Sean Tucker. He went for 14 carries, 136 yards with a touchdown. And then he also went 3 for 56 through the air and had a touchdown in an obliterating victory for 51-27 victory for the Bucs over the Saints. Suddenly the Saints have suffered some really bad losses. If we include last night to the Denver Broncos. So the New Orleans Saints, after start like high flying 2-0, especially with that offense, have fallen way back to the earth. 2-5 now, I think. So I'm going with Sean Tucker. I mean, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they play for Baker. They play for Baker, and that offense just manages to do something with whatever they're given. And so you have to respect that. He did go 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Baker Mayfield, like, trying to pull a Jameis Winston-esque performance. But if he's turning the ball over, but he's putting points up repaying by putting points up, he's already doing better than Jalen Hurts, because Jalen Hurts turns the ball over and then won't put the points up to help the defense on the flip side. So Sean Tucker for me.
That's a good one. I'm going to go with, I'm going to go Cooper DeJean. just because his first start, and we didn't know what to anticipate from him his first start. But man, they did a lot. They blitzed him. He was covering. He tackled. He had 6 total tackles, half a sack. He was all over the field, and he returned punts. Now I don't know how much I want to see him return punts anymore. Now that he's going to be starting, but yeah, I just loved what I saw from him in his first game, and to think and to see that we have Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, both 20, 21. And they're just going to grow together. They did a jersey swap with each other at the end of the game. That was freaking awesome. Like the first time they've started together. So I'm going to go with Cooper DeJean.
Get better quick, Britton Covey. Come back and take your spot.
Or let Isaiah Rodgers do it. Like, whatever. Let's
I mean, like eventually, like you see, like Albert O's on his way back, James Bradbury's on his way back. Like eventually, there ain't going to be enough spots. What do you do with a guy like Britton Covey? Like, what do you do with some of these people?
So it's going to be interesting because putting Mailata on IR today, they have an open spot. Is that going to go to Sidney Brown?
He's been a full participant in practice for back-to-back weeks.
You would also have to think that, like, if another person later comes back, Paris Campbell might be on the chopping block. But we don't want to think that far down. All right. Prediction time. Give me your players to watch, a key or two of the game, and your score prediction. I have mine written down, so just in case anybody thinks that we collaborated, we did not.
My defensive player to watch, I alluded to it earlier, Kenyon Mitchell. I think that this is a game that you can finally get that first interception, get off that schneid, get moving, and start, your rally to countless interceptions for this Philadelphia Eagles team. Match him up against Malik Neighbors. Get him playing up on Malik Neighbors. Make Malik Neighbors' day very difficult. And I think we can see we can go back and watch that matchup over and over again. I think it's going to be such a fun matchup to see 2 times this season. And one will get the better of each other here and there. But I mean, you might as well introduce Kenyon Mitchell to the game against what Malik Neighbors like that. And I mean, Malik Neighbors come back from a concussion. There was reports like he was wearing sunglasses because the lights affected him. Like, you never know. Malik Neighbors may not be fully 100% yet. So that could help Kenyon Mitchell as well. So he's going to be my player to watch on defense. The defense continue to get that pass rush. A key to the game, continue to get home. You can make Daniel Jones make mistakes. We've seen it. Daniel Jones loves to throw interceptions. You can make him uncomfortable, make him make mistakes, and that can lead to the interceptions. If I see them in the backfield, but they're not getting sacks, but they're forcing mistakes from Daniel Jones in the offense, good. If you're getting into the backfield and you're getting sacks, good too. Either way, I just need to see the consistency. We cannot revert back to what we were in the prior 4 weeks of the season. We need to continue to maybe not be as good as we were last week, because that offensive line and that quarterback are absolutely putrid. But this is a good opportunity. They're missing their top offensive lineman. They got a subpar quarterback. They got a meh offense altogether that hasn't been able to move the ball. You can make them make mistakes. You can make their day just as bad as Deshaun Watson's was last week. Hopefully Daniel Jones doesn't rattle off 10 plus completions in a row. Offensively, my player to watch, I'm going in Cam Jurgens. Cam Jurgens has kind of had a mixed bag of games this season, and he's going to have Dickerson and Becton there to kind of help out. But like, Cam Jurgens could see a whole lot of Dexter Lawrence in his face all night, and he's going to have to be there, and he's going to be supporting Dickerson or Becton, and they're going to be supporting him. But we need to see Cam Jurgens start to get better, like show some consistency. He's showing a little bit, but for the most part, we knew he wasn't going to be Jason Kelce. Let's be real. At least not from day one, week one. But he has not looked like the world's best replacement. So hopefully he'll get better, and this is a good matchup to start proving it. Stand your ground against Dexter Lawrence. Show us a good game. And And then from an offensive standpoint, the key to the game is move the damn football. Move that football on offense and start it early.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out a way to get those early starts. If you can get up by 2 scores, call it 10-0 even, or, some type of score like that on the Giants, and they're on their heels, you might have the win in the bag right there, because this is not a team that scores very easily. And that's when you got Daniel Jones probably making those bad decisions, is when you force him to have to throw the ball more and you force that offense to have to move down the field. I'll let you do your keys and your player, and then we'll predict.
My offensive player is going to be Jalen Hurts. We need him to start quick. And that kind of goes into my offensive key to the game at score in the first quarter. And kind of based off of what you said, if you can get a 10-0, 14-0 lead early, the Giants, I don't want to say they'll quit, but they might quit. They might think that they can't win the game. And the Eagles, I'm not going to say they're going to have a cakewalk the rest of the way, but get a quick early lead, and then you can let the pass rush get after Daniel Jones. On the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to go Jalen Carter. We need Jalen Carter to have a Jalen Carter game. If you can get into the face of Daniel Jones, he'll throw one up, and your player to watch, Quinyon Mitchell, could get his first career interception. They have to get turnovers. I think the Eagles are -4 turnovers or something like that. They've forced 2 turnovers all year. 2. And that's one's a Reed Blankenship interception, and the other is a fumble recovery, maybe? I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, they've only forced 2 turnovers all year, so that needs to change, and it needs to change quick. So start quick, score early, and force turnovers. And Jalen Carter and Jalen Hurts, the Jalens, are my players to watch. Your prediction.
My prediction. These are 2 struggling offenses, 2 really good defenses. So I'm gonna pick a little. I'm good. I'm gonna pick a lower scored games, which obviously now means that both teams are gonna pump out like 30 points. But I'm going Eagles 24, Giants 13.
So you say 24-13. Coming into this week, by the way, I'm 3-2 on Eagles games. You're 1-4. So your lone win was last week against the Browns. I actually have 24-14 Eagles. So we're close. The Eagles are 3.5-point favorites. I don't think we'll ever see them be a damn near 10-point favorite like they were against the Browns last week. They're just not that good.
Vegas learned their lesson last week.
Yeah, I bet the Browns plus 8.5 and what?
The bets would absolutely fly in for the opposing team if we were 10-point favorites again.
That's very true. All right. Thank you all for tuning into the Kelly Green Hour as the Philadelphia Eagles get set to do battle with the New Jersey Giants. I don't care what anybody says. They play in Jersey, as the Jets do as well. The Buffalo Bills are the only team in New York when it comes to the NFL. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHarrell54. And follow Eagles Pin Pool Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, everywhere at Eagles Pin Pool. For Connor, I'm LJ. Thank you for tuning in to the Kelly Green Hour.
Fly, Eagles, fly.